There is a habit many people never question, the habit of explaining everything internally. Why something happened, why someone behaved that way, why you feel what you feel. The mind keeps producing explanations, stories, interpretations, endless analysis. And after a while, it starts to feel like thinking, but often it is something else. It is mental noise. And this habit usually starts very early. Many people believe clarity comes from explaining everything, but explanation is not always clarity. Often, the mind is not really searching for truth. Sometimes it is just activity. The mind often explains everything for one reason. It is trying to create safety. If it can explain what happened, it feels more prepared. If it can interpret someone's behavior, it feels more in control. If it can define every emotion, it feels less uncertain. This is why constant explanation can feel useful. It creates the illusion of stability. But mental explanation is not the same as real safety. In fact, constant explanation often keeps the mind activated. The brain stays busy, attention stays engaged. The nervous system keeps scanning, and what feels like understanding is often just another form of inner tension. Constant explanation creates a subtle loop. Every experience becomes a story. Every emotion becomes a question. Every situation becomes something that must be interpreted. The mind rarely rests. It keeps constructing meaning, trying to organize everything into logical conclusions. But life does not always need a narrative, and this leads to another quiet problem. Some experiences simply happen, some emotions simply pass, and trying to explain everything can turn natural experience into mental pressure. One of the quiet problems of over-explaining life is the assumption that everything needs meaning. Every silence must mean something. Every delay must mean something. Every emotional reaction must be interpreted immediately. But not everything requires meaning. Sometimes a feeling is temporary. Sometimes a moment is incomplete. Sometimes a thought appears without needing to become a conclusion. The mind becomes heavy when it tries to give structure to everything, because explanation multiplies mental activity. And mental activity, when constant, reduces clarity instead of improving it. There is a limit to how much explanation actually helps. Beyond a certain point, analysis stops bringing understanding. At that moment, something subtle begins to happen. It starts producing tension. The mind becomes busy instead of clear. It keeps revisiting situations, replaying conversations, rebuilding interpretations, trying to reach a perfect explanation. But that explanation rarely arrives, because life is not designed to be perfectly interpreted. Every explanation becomes a story, and every story takes space inside the mind. The more stories the mind creates, the less space remains for presence. This is why some people feel mentally tired, even in quiet moments. Nothing dramatic is happening, but the inner narrative never fully stops. The mind keeps editing reality, refining interpretations, revisiting events, trying to build the perfect explanation. But life rarely becomes clearer through constant narration. At some point, the story itself becomes the burden, not the event, not the feeling, but the amount of mental energy used to explain it. A different form of awareness appears with maturity, the ability to observe without explaining everything, without turning every moment into a mental conclusion. This is not ignorance, and it is not avoidance. It is clarity. The mind recognizes that not every thought needs expansion. Not every feeling needs analysis. Not every event needs interpretation. Sometimes awareness is simply observation, There is a more stable form of awareness. Awareness without constant commentary. The ability to notice something without immediately turning it into a mental explanation. A feeling appears. You notice it. A thought appears. You notice it. A situation happens. You notice it. And that is enough. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped feeding every experience with extra mental noise. This is where mature awareness begins. Not in more explanation, but in cleaner observation. However, this shift is not always comfortable at first. At first, mental silence can feel unfamiliar. Because many people are used to constant inner commentary, a silent mind may even feel strange, as if something important is missing, as if the mind should be doing more, analyzing more, interpreting more, explaining more. But this discomfort does not mean something is wrong. It simply means the mind is adjusting to a quieter way of functioning. And once that adjustment begins, silence stops feeling empty. It starts feeling stable. And this is when something important becomes possible. There is another quiet shift that happens when the mind stops explaining everything. Life begins to feel lighter, not because problems disappear, but because the mind stops multiplying them. When every experience needs an explanation, the mind creates layers. Layers of interpretation, layers of conclusions, layers of imagined meanings. But when explanation slows down, experience becomes simpler. A moment is just a moment. A feeling is just a feeling. And the mind no longer needs to transform everything into a story. This simplicity creates something very valuable: mental space. And from that space, clarity appears naturally. Something interesting happens when explanation slows down. The mind becomes quieter, not empty, but stable. Thoughts still appear, but they no longer multiply endlessly. Experiences are allowed to exist without constant interpretation. And this creates a different relationship with life, a calmer one, a clearer one. Because clarity does not come from explaining everything. It comes from allowing some things to remain simple. Overthinking often survives because explanation feeds it. One thought leads to another explanation. That explanation produces another question, and the loop continues. But when the mind stops demanding explanations for everything, the loop weakens. Thoughts become shorter. Emotions move naturally, attention stabilizes, and what remains is something very simple: mental space. And from that space, a different relationship with life emerges. You begin to realize something simple. You do not need to explain everything to yourself. Some situations do not require interpretation. Some emotions do not require analysis. Some moments simply exist. Mature awareness recognizes this. It allows life to be experienced without turning every experience into a mental story. And when explanation slows down, clarity becomes natural, not forced, not constructed, simply present. And in that quiet space, the mind no longer needs to prove anything. It simply observes. Be prosperous from the inside out.